Hello, reporter room investigators. Come on in, come on in. We have a lot of stuff to talk about in the Bryan Kohberger case. So much breaking news that happened over the last day or two, and we have a lot to dig into. We're going to be talking about new information about Bryan Kohberger's cell phone, his computer use. Will this help the defense? Will this help Bryan Kohberger, or will this hurt the defense? Will this hurt Bryan Kohberger? We have new information about Bryan Kohberger's ATM withdrawals. Was he surveilling the victims? We're going to talk about BK's obsessive compulsive diagnosis. Will the judge admit this into the trial? The judge's latest ruling on capital punishment. Will BK be facing a firing squad if convicted? And I'm going to show you proof that BK was surveilling the victims and new information on the 911 call. So a lot of stuff to unpack. So come on in, get yourself some coffee, grab some snacks. Let me move my microphone over closer to me. Get yourself some coffee, grab yourself some snacks. We have a lot of stuff to dig into. My name is Jessica Davies. I'm an investigative journalist, and my job is to investigate crimes, crime scenes, and potential suspects, and share with you how to do the same thing. If you have not subscribed to Reporter Room, it's free. Please do subscribe. Like, share, leave a comment, and note that everything I'm sharing with you is my opinion. So please smash that thumbs up button. And I do want to do a special shout out to our subscribers, to our mods, and to our channel members. Our channel members are the ones with the red, blue, and green verified check marks, and our mods are the ones with the wrenches. And I also want to just say that in this country, Bryan Kohberger is innocent until proven guilty. With that being said, this is not a courtroom. I am not a judge. You guys are not a judge. So we're going to be talking about this case in terms of Bryan Kohberger, because also he is the one that's, his attorneys are making motions on behalf of the judges, making rulings that affect his trial. So let's talk about the judge's ruling on capital punishment. Will BK be facing a firing squad if he is convicted? And then we're going to talk about new information about Bryan Kohberger's cell phone use. Will this help or hurt his defense? We're going to talk about BK's ATM withdrawals. Was he surveilling the victims? I'm going to show you proof that he was surveilling the victims. And we're going to talk about new information on the 911 call and the roommates, Dylan and Bethany, in just a moment. So please stay with me. Let's start with the capital punishment. Let me pull this up. And we're going to start by sourcing on this is NewsWeek. Well, let me put one of these up too. Not sure why that won't pop up, but that's okay. All right, so my source on this is NewsWeek. Let me just make sure that I am not in your way. I'm not. Okay, so the judge put out quite a few rulings. We're going to go through those. I'm not going to read you all the rulings. I'm going to just read some highlights of some of them, but we're going to just go through this, dirty and quick. So the 4th District Judge ruled on Thursday that BK's attorneys had failed to prove that his autism spectrum disorder was equivalent to an intellectual disability. The judge added that autism may be a, quote, mitigating factor to be weighed against the aggravating factors in deciding whether to impose the DP, but it doesn't solely disqualify him. This is according to the Idaho Statesman. So lead attorney Ann Taylor argued in a motion last month that the U.S. Supreme Court's 2002 ruling, which held it was unconstitutional to do away with people, I'm watching my words, with intellectual disabilities, should be expanded to include people with autism. His legal team argued that that autistic people are at a higher risk of being wrongfully convicted of crimes like this and being done away with. I'm going to push back on that a little bit and say that people who have autism are or who are autistic are more likely to be victims in a crime like this than to um, perpetrate a crime like this. Somebody who is autistic is no more likely than a neurotypical person to do away with anybody. So, but we're going to talk about the new information about Bryan Kohberger's cell phone and computer use. Will this hurt or help his defense? We're going to talk about his ATM withdrawals. Was he following the victims? Was he surveilling them? We know we can't use the stalking word because the statute in Idaho is so narrow, but was he following them? We're going to talk about new information on the 911 call and Bethany and Dylan. And we're going to talk about will Bryan Kohberger's obsessive compulsive disorder diagnosis, so not the autism, but his OCD, will that be admitted? And we're also going to talk about Cy Ray. We've had a lot of hot debates, a lot of heated debates going on in the comments section about Cy Ray. So the judge added that the autism might be a mitigating factor to be weighed against the aggravating factor. So what he's saying is that in the event that BK is found guilty, that maybe it can be allowed in at that point. This is according to the Idaho Statesman. Ultimately, even though it can be used as a mitigating factor, potentially by the defense, if he is found guilty, the judge is not going to take capital punishment off the table. Because if going to someone's house and doing away with them while they're in their own rooms, in their own beds, isn't grounds for capital punishment, then I'm not sure what would qualify. The judge issued this decision after Bryan Kohberger's attorneys asked the court to bar this sentence. They have put forward multiple motions trying to get capital punishment taken off the table, and I give props to the defense team for trying this. But what do you guys think? Do you agree with the judge's ruling? The prosecutors previously indicated in court filings that they intend to seek capital punishment with a conviction. So in the event that he's convicted, they are going to ask for the ultimate DP. Knowing that this is going to stay on the table, it doesn't seem like the defense has been able to do anything to sway the judge to take this off the table. So do you believe that a plea deal can be reached between the prosecution and the defense team? If you think a plea deal can be reached, put an A in the chat. If you think a plea deal cannot be reached, put a B in the chat. Now, defense attorney Ann Taylor argued about the 2002 Supreme Court ruling, and I don't know whether you agree with Ann Taylor or don't, but most people, this is my opinion here, but most people who are sitting on death row for a capital offense, they are going to have some type of mental disorder, some type of diagnosis, if it's oppositional defiance disorder, if it's sociopathy, although that's not a DM5 diagnosis, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder. I mean, most people have some type of disorder if they're sitting, after doing away with people. And Ann Taylor wanted to, claim that autism reduced his culpability and negates the retributive and deterrent purposes of using capital punishment. And she also argued that it would expose BK to unacceptable risks if he was wrongly convicted. And according to the Associated Press, the jury will have the ability to make this decision. So do you think this decision about if he is found guilty should ultimately be made by a jury of his peers? That's what the judge believes. Curious what you guys think. The defense also asked that it be ruled considered cruel and unusual punishment, but I think that's a little bit rich in light of what happened to these victims, how they were done away with. And we're going to talk about the new information about Bryan Kohberger's cell phone and computer, whether this will help or hurt his defense. His ATM withdrawals, was he surveilling victims? I believe he was. I'm going to show you, I'm going to prove it. New information on the 911 call, and we're going to talk about Cy Ray and Dylan and Bethany in just a moment, so please stay with me. So the defense team were trying to alert the judge that she was claiming, this is Elisa Massoth. She's the one that's always smiling in the court. She said, quote, the jurors will watch his every move and pass judgment on him every minute of the jury trial based on how he looks and reacts. I don't think that's going to be the case. And the judge did not think that was going to be the case. He thought that was more likely, if they brought up the autism, that the jury would be more likely to be looking for odd behaviors. So and he also stated that he didn't see anything that, said that he thought, he thought Bryan Kohberger presented himself perfectly nicely in court. He didn't see anything that he would have characterized as odd. But he also stated specifically defendant's assertions, testimony about his autism spectrum disorder will help the jury understand that his behavioral characteristics, such as a flat affect, intense eye contact, awkward body posture, and lack of emotive responses, are associated with autism spectrum disorder and should not be interpreted in a sinister light, the court order reads. So he just was not having this. He just wasn't having it. I think that what the defense team's actually really, really worried about is the fact that we have all of these, eyewitness accounts of him behaving poorly. We know from the Seven Sirens owner at the Seven Sirens Tavern that BK used the B word with female customers and servers. He was so awful that they had a card on him warning people, the staff, to be careful of him, that when he gets a few drinks in him, he behaves badly. We know that one date that he went on, that he, told the woman afterwards that she had good birthing hips. I think this was absolutely meant to be an insult. We know that at WSU, he was grading female members of his classroom differently than the male. That's not appropriate. Should be based on your work, not on anything else. We also heard that he got kicked out of high school because he was having trouble with female students. We also have heard from Idaho State students, 3 witnesses that came forward that said they saw him on the University of Idaho campus. Now, mind you, he did not attend that university. So why was he there in the student union in the cafeteria sipping water? Why was he there? And the students say that he stared at them. And this is also not characteristic of autism, which makes me skeptical of this. And we did find out during the latest filing that this autism diagnosis was indeed diagnosed while he was in jail. And profiler Pratt Brown said that you can find somebody that will testify to almost anything if you pay them enough. So I'm not saying he is autistic or isn't autistic. I'm just saying I'm not convinced. The fact that his mother was a special needs teacher and he went his whole life without being diagnosed, I'm not convinced that this diagnosis is or isn't correct. I just don't think it's relevant. But the judge characterized his demeanor in court as being, quote, entirely appropriate. So let's talk about Bryan Kohberger's obsessive compulsive disorder. Will the judge allow this diagnosis during the trial? And then we're going to talk about the new information regarding Bryan Kohberger's cell phone and computer use. Will this help? Will this hurt Bryan Kohberger's defense? Bryan Kohberger's ATM withdrawals. Was he surveilling? Was he following the victims? I am going to show you that he was. And new information on the 911 call and Cy Ray, Bethany, and Dylan in just a moment. So let's talk about the obsessive compulsive disorder next. I do want to see what you guys said on the polling, if we have any A's or B's in the chat. So come on in, come on up and talk to me. I'm looking for A's and B's in the chat. Yeah, I got some. Okay. Here we go. Let me back it up a little bit. This is NJazz. She's our head mod, along with Brother Mike and Sixth Sense Amelia. I'm trying to see if I see them in the chat. I don't right now. It doesn't mean they're not here. Hi, DM. Thank you for modding today. Thank you for modding today, Barbara. Thank you for modding today, Dabs. Thanks for modding, Shelly. Hi, Can I Kick It? Okay, so hi, Skylar. Hi, Barbara. Grunger says B. M. Barbarossa, Stolen Spirits, put a B. Shelly put a B. Jen says, I hope not. Trina put a B. Thank you for modding today, and Jazz. Dabs, great to see you. Let's see. Prayers for the victim's family. Yes, I think that's important that they are remembered. I feel, anybody else feel like the victims' families are being lost in this process? it does seem like when we get on these cases that one of the things that happens is that the victims' families are suddenly lost in the process of all of this. And the person that's on trial suddenly becomes some type of infamous celebrity type of person. Christine put a B, Kathleen put a B, so I haven't seen any A's yet. Kelly put a B, so no plea deals. No plea deals is a B. Okay. Mike says B. Belladonna says B. Top Cat says B. Urban says B. Lori put B. Jen put a B. Njaz B. Pauline B. Skylar B. ALR put an A. Tony put an A. Adriana put a B. Elaine B. Ryan B. Juanita A. So A is if you think there will be a plea deal. B if you think there will not be a plea deal. Dab says B. Here's our other head mod, Mike. Thank you so much for modding today. Mike put a B. Hi, Crime Dog. Barbara put a B. Donna put a B. Emma says she does not think he deserves a plea deal. Lawrence put a B. Crafty Michelle put a B. Hi, Midwest. All right, so Crime Dog has B. Lovey Ball has a B. Brother Mike says, yeah, mods, please help in chat. Welcome others. Watch for the trolls. Yeah, troll alert. Okay. Ryan says the plea deal is between the eyes or the heart. Thank you for sharing that. Grunger says, I believe defense has been trying to convince BK to ask for a deal and he refuses. I think that's why his other lawyer left the case. It could be. We've also heard some speculation that his mother doesn't want him to accept a plea deal, that she's, wants him to fight this. So I'm wondering if he feels some pressure from his family also. I don't really know. Mike says, he said he's going to help you and then kept, and he's done. Yeah, when you say, I'm here to help you, and then you do what you did, that's, if that's not grounds for capital punishment, I don't know what is. Juanita said they are admitting he's guilty. Lovey Ball thinks he's cruel. Jackson put in a B. So I saw a couple of A's, mostly B's. DM thought it was a B. Donna thought it was a B. All right. Hi, Lori. Come on in. Tell me where you're from, you guys. Come on in. Tell me where you're from. And please give this a thumbs up. Let's continue on, though, because we have a lot of stuff to unpack. Grunger said, I believe the defense has been trying to convince BK to ask for a deal, and he refuses. I think that's why the other lawyers left his case. And Mike said, he's going to help you. Yeah, exactly. I want to welcome Laura, our newest channel member. Welcome to Reporter Room. I'm glad you're part of our Reporter Room family. And I want to thank Njaz for gifting a Reporter Room membership. That is so nice of you. Njaz, thank you so much. If you receive that, let me know who you are, and also make sure you say thank you to Njaz. Okay, so let's talk about obsessive compulsive disorder. Will the judge allow this diagnosis during the trial? And then we're going to discuss new information about Bryan Kohberger's cell phone computer use. Will this help or hurt BK? His ATM withdrawals. Was he following the victims? I believe he was. I'm going to show you why. New information on the 911 calls. Dylan and Bethany and Cy Ray in just a few moments. So let's talk about the obsessive compulsive disorder next. Let me close this out. Okay, and we're going to go through some of the orders a little bit more wonky style. Now, okay, let me just back this up. All right, so we'll just put it there so people know what we're talking about if they come in. So Bryan Kohberger was diagnosed while he was behind bars with obsessive compulsive disorder. So neither the autism diagnosis or the obsessive compulsive disorder diagnosis happened until he was behind bars. This is according to multiple news outlets. So this was not from childhood, which I think is interesting because his mother is a special ed teacher. So I would think that if she had seen signs of him being autistic or signs of him being obsessive compulsive, she would have gotten this diagnosis. But and as profiler Pat Brown pointed out, you can find an expert to testify to almost anything if you pay them. So the fact that he wasn't diagnosed with either one of these until he was in jail is interesting. Now, I think the obsessive compulsive disorder diagnosis can be a double-edged sword. So I'm wondering if So it remains unclear whether jurors will hear about his OCD. The judge has said he's going to reserve judgment on the OCD until trial. So I'm curious what you think the judge is going to decide. Do you think he's going to allow this obsessive compulsive disorder to be presented at trial? In my opinion, this would be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it would explain why Bryan Kohberger is wearing medical grade gloves after the crime. But I think it's also worth noting, which is why I put this picture up, that BK was not wearing medical grade gloves during any of the traffic stops. We've seen 3 traffic stops with Bryan Kohberger. He wasn't wearing gloves in any of those 3 photographs. So why was he only wearing them after the crime? Is it because he realized he left his knife sheath behind? Again, he's innocent until proven guilty, but I am talking about this case in terms of him because I am not a judge, you are not a judge, and we are not a jury, and this is not a courtroom. So I think the OCD could help explain some of his odd behavior, about, wearing the medical grade gloves. The defense said that BK had a tendency to wear gloves and dispose of shower curtains. Isn't that interesting? He got rid of shower curtains. They said it also caused sleep difficulties that led to his habit of nighttime driving. And so my question is, did he dispose of his shower curtains at his parents' house also? Was he taking nighttime drives after these crimes were committed? After November 13th of 2022, did BK continue to enjoy nighttime drives after the crimes? When law enforcement was staking out the house in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, his parents' home, did he continue to enjoy nighttime drives while he was visiting with his parents? So they want to blame his OCD for him wearing the gloves. But if you look at this picture, there's no gloves. He's not wearing gloves in any of the traffic stops that we have of him. We have 3. He wasn't wearing them when he was pulled over at WSU for a crosswalk violation when he talked himself out of the ticket. In fact, it doesn't look like he started wearing gloves until after the crimes. So we're going to talk about the new information regarding Bryan Kohberger's cell phone and computer use. We're going to talk about the ATM withdrawals. Was he following the victims? I'm going to show you that I think that he was. New information on the 911 call, Dylan, Bethany, Cy Ray. We're going to do that next. But I want to just talk about how I think the OCD is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it might help him to help explain the gloves because we know that when law enforcement had him under surveillance right before they busted into the Albrightsville, Pennsylvania house and arrested him, he was in the kitchen. They probably were watching him on a rifle scope. He was in the kitchen sorting trash, separating his own trash from his parents' trash and putting his trash into separate baggies, and he was wearing gloves. So nothing suspicious about that. When you consider, I'm being sarcastic, I think it is suspicious. And I think he knew after those 2 traffic stops on his way from Pullman, Washington to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania with his dad, he had to be like, his mind had to be ticking, spinning, that they were, onto him. So I do think he became obsessed with Maddie. I think he really began liking her. I think he thought she was pretty. And then when she wasn't paying attention to him, because Maddie had a boyfriend named Jake, so she's not going to be paying attention to BK. I think this obsession ultimately turned to hate. And that's where I can see the other edge of the obsessive compulsive disorder. If the defense introduces this, the prosecution can then introduce the fact that he became obsessed with victims and attribute the OCD as a motive, in my opinion. So let's talk about the 911 call. Is the jury going to hear this? And then we're going to talk about new information on Bryan Kohberger's cell phone, new information on his computer use. Will this help him? Will this hurt him in the trial? And then Bryan Kohberger's ATM withdrawals. Was he following the victims? Yes, he was. And Cy Ray, Dylan, Bethany in just a moment. So I'm going through this as quickly as I can. The 911 call is coming in. So let me pull that up. All right. So my source on this is going to be the Idaho Statesman. Let me grab that. Take this down. Okay. All right. So the judge made a ruling on the 911 call. Let me make sure we're all looking at it and that I'm not in your way. I'm not going to play it because we've heard it and I have it on the channel if you want to hear it. Because the judge is kind of split the baby here, in my opinion. He um, said that the prosecutors can play for the jurors all but three portions of the 911 call. That this was so And he also determined that the text messages between Bethany and Dylan were, quote, likely admissible. So I do believe the jury is going to see the Dylan and Bethany's text messages. Now, he rejected the defense's argument to restrict the call during BK's trial. They also requested that only approved portions of the recording with 911 dispatch be allowed or a transcript of the call, but not both. But the judge decided that the jurors would be given a transcript also, in addition, to be used as an aid in understanding all of the permitted portions of the conversation with the dispatcher. So not only are they going to hear the call, they are going to have a transcript with it. So he said, he wrote, some of the hearsay statements in the 911 call do not qualify under the exceptions cited by the state and therefore must be redacted. However, the balance of the 911 call, as well as the texts and conversations noted herein, are likely admissible, provided that the requisite foundation is laid at trial. So they're going to have to lay the foundation, the prosecution is, if they want this admitted. The three portions of the call that the judge said he would restrict from the jurors as hearsay included when a female friend told the dispatcher that one of the four victims was drunk the night before and passed out and wasn't waking up. So that was Xana, because that wasn't one of the roommates. That was a female friend who said that. Police said from the beginning of the 911 call was report of a unconscious person. In another instance, the same female friend told the dispatcher that a surviving roommate, so this is going to be Dylan or Bethany, saw a man in the home when the students were done away with, and the judge labeled this as hearsay. So everything that the roommate said, that Bethany and Dylan said, will be allowed in, but what the friend said will not be allowed in. And then the report of an unconscious person is also being redacted out, but the rest will be in, and the jury will have a transcript in addition to being able to listen to the call. Also, when one of the surviving roommates tried to explain what happened overnight, but was quickly interrupted by the dispatcher, the judge said this will be redacted from the call too. That same roommate is expected to testify. So that is, I believe, is Dylan or Bethany, and offer that information and the description of the man she saw in the home. So I believe this is going to be Dylan, who reportedly saw a man dressed all in black, wearing a balaclava type mask, which we know BK did own one that, covered his face and eyes. She described him as having bushy eyebrows. The defense tried to keep the term bushy eyebrows from being presented. The judge ruled against that as well. She said he was 6 feet tall or taller, and Dylan was 5'10". So, this turned out to be pretty accurate. Bryan Kohberger is 6 feet tall. And she said he was muscular, but I'm sorry, he was athletic, but not muscular. She described him as a basketball type. I believe this also fits the description of Bryan Kohberger. So that in and of itself isn't, and I don't even think the roommates, this is my opinion, let me know what you think. I don't think the roommates, what they're thinking about this, how they're describing him, I don't think their testimony is going to be the be all or end all that people think it is. I think there's a lot more compelling evidence. I think, she will be able to establish who she saw, that, bushy eyebrows, that it does fit the description. And I think Bethany's going to talk about the man that she saw who was taking something off. I believe it was a coverall or a monkey suit, and dropping it into a bag. So, that will help. But I think the, defense team will be going after them as well. They were, Dylan reportedly had over 10 drinks. That's a lot of alcohol. So the judge also ruled to keep the state's experts at trial. And we're going to dive more into that in just a second. So please stay with me. So he followed rulings of on a host of other things. We're going to go through more of this, but we know that bushy eyebrows is coming in, and Taylor did not want the words bushy eyebrows to be allowed. She lost that motion. The decision on the 911 call was one of the last ones for the judge to make on an all-day hearing that I streamed. If you want to watch the hearing in its entirety, it's definitely interesting. And we're going to be having another hearing in mid-May, and I will be streaming that at all. But the judge wrote, there is no basis to exclude or limit the detective's disclosed testimony. So he's talking about 3 different members of law enforcement with backgrounds in digital forensics. He said it's clear they will be testifying to the facts of their investigation, not providing traditional expert opinions. So the next pretrial is May 15th. I will be airing that on this channel. All right, let me take this down. Let me put this back up. Was arrested on. Okay. And I just want to check in with chat. Let me just see where we're at. Okay, so the 911 is coming in. The next thing we're going to talk about. Okay, so this is getting juicy. Okay, so the next thing, this is really interesting. We're going to discuss new information regarding Bryan Kohberger's ATM withdrawals. He's on camera making ATM withdrawals. Was he surveilling the victims? And then we're going to dive into new information on Bryan Kohberger's cell phone and his computer use. Will this help or hurt his defense? And we're going to talk about Ray in just a few moments. So please stay with me. But let's begin talking about his ATM withdrawals. All right, so let me grab that. I have so many packages open. Make sure I'm grabbing the white one. Yeah, okay. All right, so let me move myself out of the way. Let's see. If I can come over here. Yeah, that's better. Okay. So we're going to go through this next. Let me just check in with chat. I do want this to be an interactive experience. If you're watching at home, come on up to the top chat and talk to me. Yeah, Mike is right. Brother Mike is right. This is when our other head mod, Brother Mike. Stalking is not how we describe it. I have people, there's been a lot of confusion about this. And remember, first of all, there's a couple things. One, the prosecution did say there was no stalking, and they said this a long time ago. They said this over a year ago. So, there's that. But more importantly, the statute of what's considered stalking versus surveillance or following is very narrow. To be considered stalking in Idaho, the victims have to feel harassed or threatened. In this case, I don't think stalking statute applies. The legal definition of stalking applies because I don't think that these victims even knew that Bryan Kohberger existed, in my opinion. But, maybe we'll find out differently. But was he surveilling them? Yes. Was he following them? Yes. And I'm going to prove that to you in just a moment. So please stay with me. So stalking, 23 times his phone pinged. We were told 11 and then a 12th the morning of the crimes. Now we're finding out. So there's new information. So that's why, this is a critical thinkers channel for people who want to have all the information to make up their own mind. So what I would say is, as we're heading into this trial, don't get too fixated on one thing or another thing. Let's keep our minds open to the new information that's going to come in, because it's really, really typical for human beings. And I have to watch this too, to get into a mindset of confirmation bias, where we're just seeking out information that already reinforces what we already believe. But I think it's important to let the new information come in. So yes, his phone pinged now 23 times. So I think the cast report is going to be important too, Charmin. So, and also 6 Cents Amelia is our other head mod. Thank you for modding today. Amelia and Jazz is our other head mod, and Brother Mike, if you're just joining us. So thank you to all of our mods. Okay. Dion said if he had IDs, he probably was in the house prior to the crimes. Well, we know that this is such a great comment, because we know that he, allegedly he broke into a colleague, a friend of his at WSU, a female friend, and moved things around, but didn't steal anything. He tended and befriended her. So this is shows sort of a mastermind type of deviance, in my opinion. He tended and befriended her and convinced her not to talk to the police, not to turn this into the police, but instead let him install security cameras. So she let him install security cameras. He then got her Wi-Fi password and used the cameras to spy on her. I mean, that's just some like next level creepiness, in my opinion. So yeah, not stalking, but definitely, because she didn't, that would not be considered stalking in Idaho either. What he did to his friend from WSU, this female student or this female colleague, that's not considered stalking either, because she didn't know about it. She didn't feel threatened or harassed at the time. But was he surveilling her? Yeah, heck yeah, he was. Top Cat said, I think it's very likely he took items from the victims as souvenirs. Well, that's why the ID inside the box, inside a glove, inside his parents' Albrightsville, Pennsylvania home, who that ID belongs to could be more important than the DNA, in my opinion. And this is why I just don't think that the roommates of Dylan and Bethany, what they say or don't say, I think there'll be some things that help the prosecution. I think there'll be some things that help the defense. The fact that they were drunk, might help the defense a little bit. But I don't think that their testimony has the importance that some people want to place on it. I think the ultimate testimony is going to be things like the DNA, the fact that let's talk about this. The fact that he was, surveilling the victims is going to be a problem. The ID found inside the glove, inside the box, is going to be a problem. Dig the Past said, in my opinion, it's not odd for someone to have a going for hikes in the day or at night. I carry one in venturing out in the wilderness. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Colleen said B. 433 watching, 183 likes. Yeah, give this a thumbs up. Let YouTube know we're doing a G-rated show. Mike says, thanks for modding today, Mike. He was really eager to know. He went by at 9:15 and nothing was happening. DM says, I think he was in the house before. I wouldn't be surprised if he had cameras in there too. I haven't seen any evidence that there were cameras in the 1122 King Road house yet, but I'll keep digging. Barbara said number 85 on the thumbs up. Thanks for that, Barbara. Grunger said, when he couldn't see anything online, he decided to drive back around. Yeah. And Can I Kick It said, if he has the ID, to me, that's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Yeah. I think that ID inside a glove, inside the box, and we know there was evidence that was found inside the Albrightsville, Pennsylvania home because Ann Taylor motioned to keep the evidence away from the jury. We know, and I talked about this, I showed you guys enhanced photos of this traffic stop to keep his, because I think there is a cut on his wrist. I think if you look at that wrist, I don't think that's a shadow. I think that is a cut. And I think that is also, there was a body search done when he was arrested. There was a body search. And if you think about his selfie photo where he's buttoned all the way up, but we can see like a little marking here, and we can see the blisters on the thumb in the photos. I enhanced on that as well. Let me just show that. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm just going to see that shirt all buttoned up. That's a fine motor skill to be able to button up your shirt, tie your shoes. Those are all fine motor skills. Being able to do this or this, that's not a fine motor skill. That's a gross motor skill. So the thumb, when you just look at it, you can see little markings, but when you enhance it, you can see there is blisters there. And red knuckles, a lot of people point there. You can see there clearly are blisters on the hand. A lot of people also pointed out that they could see red, that the knuckles look red in between, the white on the knuckle part, and then very, very red in between. So you could see, the pinkness of his skin, but how white the knuckles were. And then some people think they can see a Band-Aid on the ring finger. I tried to see if I could see it. With the image that we were given by the prosecution. And then somebody else asked me, did I provide this to law enforcement? Well, yeah, I didn't provide this to law enforcement because this is from law enforcement body cam footage. This is their body cam footage. So I wouldn't have to provide this to law enforcement. They have it. And then the selfie picture was provided by the prosecution. So I just didn't want somebody thinking I enhanced these photos, but that's, the provenance of the photos, So some people said they didn't think it. So let's go through the new information about Bryan Kohberger's cell phone and computer use. Will this help Bryan Kohberger? Will this hurt Bryan Kohberger? And then we're going to, but I want to talk about his ATM withdrawals. Let's do that next. All right, let's do that right now. Take this down, add this in. Okay, let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you guys. Make sure I'm not blocking it. Okay, so there's like a plethora of witnesses that the judge went through, and I will probably go through these with you guys to just go through everything, but I just want to kind of do the highlights today because there is so much to unpack here, and I don't want it to get so wonky where I'm just reading to you guys these pages of documents, but this is going to be a forensic accountant. Now he is FBI, and he is disclosed to testify to the financial transaction data for the defendant Bryan Kohberger, the 4 victims, and the 2 roommates. So his initial disclosure identifies by category and date range in the financial transaction data he intends to testify to, and appends Mr. Douglas's, so not Michael Douglas, the actor. This is his name is just got 2 S's there. It appends Mr. Douglas's report of specific transactions found within these individuals' financial data. So his supplemental disclosures identify specifically the financial data associated with defendant that he intends to discuss, and also identifies video evidence obtained showing the defendant Bryan Kohberger making ATM withdrawals. Why is this significant? It's because of where he was making the ATM withdrawals. The defendant contends that Mr. Douglas should not be able to offer any opinion. That's what the defense team wanted. They didn't want this in. Remember, if it's good for Bryan Kohberger, the defense wants it to come in. If it's bad for Bryan Kohberger, they put a motion to suppress. The motion was denied, but this is the judge. The defense contends that Mr. Douglas should not be able to offer any opinions because none are expressed in his disclosures. Specifically, defendant notes that Mr. Douglas's supplemental disclosure indicates he will testify to analysis of defendant's spending habits. Defendant takes issue with this, arguing there is no spending habit opinion disclosed. However, Mr. Douglas's disclosure makes clear that he is intended as a fact witness, is only being disclosed as an expert in the event that the court determines his testimony was based on specialized knowledge under IRE 702. Moreover, although the supplemental disclosure appears to indicate he will offer an opinion as to defendant's spending habits, and his testimony will be limited to factual changes in how the defendant spent money. For example, the disclosure notes that the defendant only conducted ATM withdrawals on or after the date of the November 13th crimes. I'm watching my words here. And ceased using his debit card after November 10th of 2022, whereas prior to November 10th of 2022, he had regularly used his debit card. So why were his behaviors changing? This, I think, goes to premeditation, in my opinion. Judge says there is no indication he will attempt to opine about the reasons for the spending changes, just as that they occurred. Defense does not want anybody wondering why he stopped using his ATM. And I think it's because the ATM, him on camera withdrawing from his ATM, is going to line up with places where the victims were. And the fact that he stopped using that ATM, to me, shows on the 10th, tells me that this was premeditated. The judge said, thus, there is no basis for excluding or limiting Mr. Douglas's testimony based on disclosure concerns. So he will be allowed to testify, and he will be his testimony will not be limited. So I do think that's really, really interesting. Now we're going to talk about the cell phone data. We're going to talk about his cell phone and computer use. Will this help or hurt Bryan Kohberger? And then we're going to talk about Cy Ray in just a moment. So please stay with me. But I have a question for you. Do you think the prosecution is working to prove that Bryan Kohberger was surveilling the victims? And surveilling, I know everybody's going to be, but he's not stalking. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm not using the word stalking. I'm using the word surveilling. So let's talk about this. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Make sure I'm not blocking your view. Okay. So this was done by Garrett Discovery. For those of you that don't want to take the mainstream media, you can see here that Twitter user Bryan Kohberger, they've gone through, they found all his Instagram account, Instagram user. They also went through his affiliation. So they found his aliases or just differences. Bryan Kohberger, Bryan.Kohberger, Bryan Kohberger with 2 R's, BK5781, Bryan.Kohberger.PhD, criminology _student. They found his Cash App, his old email addresses at DeSales and WSU. Whoa. And so this is all the people that he was following on Instagram. So these are the Instagram. He was following 1,089 people. And if you go down to page 12, you can clearly see that Bryan Kohberger was following Kaylee Jade. And you can also see that he was following Madison May Mogan. So he was following both victims on Instagram. And this was research done by Garrett Discovery. And it was also want to credit Shadow Dragon for this research. All right, so let's talk about let me grab this. All right, so let's talk more about BK and following the victims. Okay, so this is another motion made by the judge, which I think is very, very relevant. Let me check in with chat. I do want to say hello to chat. I do want this to be interactive. Lori says, I feel like he was picked up on camera driving the car. I think they'll be SVJD go. Virgil says, somebody suggested after the investigation that BK is maybe related to Bethany. Maybe he had her idea. No, there's no, I have not seen any credible sourcing that he's related to any of the victims. But thank you for sharing that. And if it was Bethany's ID, I don't know. I don't know whose idea it was. Supposedly it was one of the victims. But we'll see, you know. Jet J said, I spent $13 a month and I never see any ads. Yeah, you can get premium on YouTube. I have it. So when I'm playing stuff for you guys, I don't show you guys ads. It really is a great service. Lori says, I think they're able to prove he was driving the car. I feel like the camera had to have picked up him physically behind the wheel. I think so too. I think that there's going to be proof that he was driving the car. But I also think even if they don't have him, you know, he kept the balaclava mask on and drove the car that way. I still think they'll be able to have identifying features about that car, which is why Ann Taylor did not want that August 21st traffic stop. And I think that's twofold. One, I think she didn't want anything that's going to link him to that crime scene. It's going to link that particular Hyundai Elantra with the missing front license plate to the November 13th crimes. But two, I also think that Ann Taylor did not want that August 21st traffic stop because it took place near the 1122 King Road house, and the prosecution is going to be lining that up with phone pings to prove that the phone pings are actually Bryan Kohberger. Kenna Kick said, what does the ATM withdrawal said? Well, let me get into that. Next, I just do want to say thank you so much to Brother Mike for the $1.99 super sticker. Thank you so much. I'm putting that toward my computer. I have the computer in the shopping cart. I am like just But the computer prices keep bouncing around. I don't know if it's because of everything going on with the tariffs. Every time, so I'm just like kind of holding because they were lower a couple weeks ago, and then as soon as I put it in my cart, the prices jumped by $100. So I'm just waiting because $100 is a lot of money. Thank you, Christine, for the $1.99 super sticker. Thank you so much. I do really appreciate this. I put a lot of time and energy into the live streams to bring you guys credibly sourced information. So I really appreciate your thank you so much. Thank you. Shelley says, love your work, Jessica, and love this community. I love our community too. We have the nicest true crime community. And this is a critical thinkers channel. So if you are the type of person that likes to have all the information to make up your own mind, then you are in the right place. So thank you for that, Shelley. Thank you, Cheetah. Oh my gosh, for the $19.99. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Very, very kind and generous. Thank you so much. And thank you, Enjaz, for gifting another reporter room membership. That is 2 reporter room memberships today. So if you receive one of those, please let me know who you are and make sure you say thank you to Enjaz because that is so nice. Okay. Florence said, I saw ticker tape go across my screen a couple days ago. It said the judge had ruled on the DP. Yeah, I talked about that. If you back up the chat, I opened with that. So I did because that was breaking news. I always open with breaking news. This is all breaking news. I'm just trying to get through it as quick as I can. Shelley said, perhaps, though, he was watching them online from Washington. Could it be classified as stalking? Not unless they felt threatened or harassed. And in my opinion, I don't think these victims knew he existed. But let me know if you have a different feeling about it. Dig the Past said, as a junior, Dylan's testimony is out as soon as she says how messed up she was. Well, it'll ultimately be up to the jury to decide. I think some of the stuff is helpful. She did give an accurate description of the person who perpetrated the crime, so I think it'll be helpful in that respect. But I think Ann Taylor, will try to go after the fact that she was drinking. She admits she wasn't trying to cover it up or pretend she wasn't drinking. She admitted she had had a lot of drinks. So we'll see what the jury does with that. Teresa says they need to check if he wore gloves in class or anywhere before and after November 3rd. Thank you. Yes. If he was just started wearing gloves for his OCD and taking down the shower curtain for his OCD only after the November 13th crime and started taking late night drives before the crimes, if he was wearing gloves before the crime, then that's not related to the OCD. If he was taking long night drives after the crime, then maybe it is related. But if it was before the crime and he stopped as soon as the crimes were committed, I don't think that can be attributed to OCD. So we'll see what the judge does with that. And the judge may be waiting to see what the state and prosecution do also. Maybe that's why he's waiting on that ruling. Bad law, the stalking law. Yeah, it's a really narrow statute, Dabs. It really is. Mike said 23 with the phone on. I'm sure there's more than 23. And Dion says Dylan and Bethany did both great and still to this day. And Barbara says there's no doubt that he's surveilling. And Enjaz says, yes, she believes that Dylan and Bethany are also victims in this crime. The trial jury selection begins July 30th, and the trial will begin as soon as jury selection is completed. I'm going to be airing it on this along with the hearing in May. So please make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell, and we can watch this hearing together like we did on the last one. If you like to watch and don't like have somebody talking over while you're watching the hearing, then this is the right channel for you. The DM's 5 statements were all consistent. That's what the judge said. He thought that's how he characterized her statements. He can characterize them as consistent. Dion said that's why he is so terrible at WSU. He was obsessed. And that's where I think the obsessive compulsive disorder is a double-edged sword for Ann Taylor and the defense team. On the one hand, it could explain away the gloves. It could explain away the meticulous cleaning that law enforcement saw him doing of his car while they had it under surveillance. It could explain him separating out his trash, maybe from his parents' trash, but walking his trash down to the neighbor's trash bin. I don't know. I don't know if but the other side of it is that the prosecution can come back and say, yeah, he has obsessive compulsive disorder. He became obsessed with one of the victims and use it to show motive. So I do think it's a double-edged sword for Bryan Kohberger. And thank you so much, Tara, My Insane World, for the $19 $19.99 help with the streamers. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. That's really nice of you guys. All right, let's continue on because we still have a lot of stuff to go through. And I had a whole other show planned and ended up just like throwing that one out and doing this one instead. I had planned out a completely different show day before yesterday. Okay, so let's talk about this. Is the judge's ruling here on the order of defendant's motion in limine, vague and undisclosed expert testimony. So I'm not even going into this, but we should. On the next one, we will go into who some of these other witnesses are, but I want to focus on these two on this one. So we're going to talk about Heather and Jared Barnhart, because I think this is really interesting. And then we're going to talk about Cy next. Okay, the Barnharts are digital specialists with Cellbrite. Now, they were retained by law enforcement to analyze the defendant, Bryan Kohberger's cell phone and PC, so his computer and cell phone, to determine user behaviors and actions. They disclosed to opine that the gaps in data on the two devices were abnormal. So let's look at that. Attached to the disclosure is a joint report authored by the Barnharts detailing their analysis and findings. The CVs, that's their resume, were provided as well. So let's go through that. For example, the defendant complained at the hearing that Agent Balance analyzed handoff data for 7 minutes prior to the phone powering off at 2:54 a.m. on November 13th of 2022, but did not provide an opinion about what his analysis showed. The defendant wanted to exclude any opinion as to what his analysis is of those 7 minutes. However, as pointed out, Agent Balance rebuttal disclosure, page 13 of the CAST report, sets forth the data Agent Balance relied on to opine that the defendant's phone was used a certain tower and sector at 2:47 a.m. southeast of his apartment and ceased communication with the network at 2:54 a.m. He also explains that the location of a device is best estimated by the initial cell site versus the handoff cell site. He will be allowed to testify to these opinions. If the defendant believes Agent Balance strays beyond these opinions, he can object and the court will take the matter up then. So here we go. The state submitted the following disclosures for the Barnharts. I'm going to scroll back up and finish up. Initial disclosure, Heather Barnhart. Initial disclosure, Jared Barnhart. Rebuttal disclosures, Heather and Jared. S3 through S5, February 17th of 2025. Their rebuttal disclosures state simply that the Barnharts intend to rebut the expert testimony of Carol Pendon, Kevin Pendon, and Josiah Roloff, but need additional information prior to offering rebuttal opinions. The defendant is not challenging these. And this is signed off by the judge. So let's go back up here to these. Okay. So Bryan Kohberger's activities on his cell phone and his computer also changed around the time. And again, each one of these on their own, this is a circumstantial case, can be, chalked up to, okay, well, he took a shower curtain down. Okay, well, there was an ID of one of the victims found inside a glove, inside a box in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. Okay. He was following the victims on Instagram. Okay. His DNA was found on the knife sheath underneath and to the side of Maddie. Okay. His car, the white Hyundai Elantra, that looks just like it, was missing a front license plate, was seen circling the house in the minutes leading up to the crimes. But when you start putting it together, which is what the jury is going to do, it starts to become more and more compelling, in my opinion. Let me know if you have a different opinion, because all opinions are welcome. Just express them in a way that's not rude. The defendant argues that the disclosures indicate that they will testify to habit evidence, which he complains is not explained and is not accompanied. So he is Bryan Kohberger and is not accompanied by any opinions. Defendant's challenge is confusing. Nowhere do the disclosures or the reports indicate that the Barnharts will testify about the habit evidence. Rather, the disclosures state they will testify to their findings. This is the judge saying this pertaining to the defendant's activities on his PC and cell phone for a period of time before and after the crimes. I'm watching my words. And why gaps in the data over the time period are abnormal. So there were gaps in the data. In other words, he was deleting his search history. The Barnhart, again, in and by itself, not a big deal. But when you start adding things together, which is what a circumstantial case does, it's brick by brick, piece by piece, it's starting to add up. The Barnhart's opinions, in my opinion, let me know if you have a different one, that's fine. The Barnhart's opinions regarding these topics are fully set forth in their joint report. For example, they observed gaps in defendant's school PC that may be consistent with cleaning up or using, and remember, this guy was going to be applied for a job with the Pullman Police Department to teach them about criminology and technology. He wanted to teach them how to use technology to solve crimes. So cleaning up or using anti-forensic methods to clear evidence. RP page 1. Among the gaps found were in the PC's event logs and system resource usage monitoring between November 11th and November 16th of 2022, which the Barnharts opined was abnormal given that the school was in session. Yeah, why would he be deleting using anti-forensic methods to clear information off of his computer while school was still in session? I could see at the end of the session, or if he'd been doing this, every other day the whole time, but to just be clearing it right then and there, again, in and of itself doesn't mean a lot. Adding in with other things, it's starting to add up. So likewise, they noted the gaps in the PC Chrome history during the dates where downloads occurred on the system, indicating that the user was private browsing or clearing browsing history. So he was browsing incognito or clearing his browser history. Together, the Barnhart's disclosures and joint reports set forth all that is required by IRC 16b7, and there is no basis to exclude or limit their testimony. I think this is like a double negative. I think there is no basis. I don't know. I think this is a typo right here, to exclude or limit their testimony. So their testimony comes in, and we can go through some of the other ones too, if you want to. But what are they going to testify to? They're going to testify to the fact that Bryan Kohberger was deleting stuff off of his computer, his PC at home and at work, that he was, deleting stuff off of his PC. So I think that is a problem for the defense. If he had been doing this the whole time, like every day he cleared his cookies and deleted, but if he's like searching for things incognito and just deleting at the time of the crimes, that looks bad, in my opinion. Let me know if you have a different. Yes, thank you so much, Shelley. Shelley said, this is a fact-based channel. Any opinions are purely speculation, so please be respectful in chat. Yeah, I mean, all opinions are welcome. Just be respectful of them. It's okay. We don't all have to agree. Are we going to all agree on this case? No. Are we? Does everybody agree with my take on Nicole Kessinger and the Chris Watts case? No, we're not going to all agree on every case. But, the important thing is that, we just allow people to have their opinions. So you don't have to agree with my speculations, but I am going to share with you. Irina says, hi, everyone from Croatia, Europe. Thanks, Jessica, for everything. Bryan Kohberger is the questionable culprit for me, but we'll see. Me, myself, and I says, in my opinion, I can almost 1,000 say that they have some actual video showing his car license plate and BK walking from the house to his car. I don't know if they have. I don't know. I think they are going to be able to show that. I think I agree with you that they are going to have something that probably shows it's his tag or some defining characteristic of that Hyundai Elantra, in my opinion. And we know the body search that they did after he was arrested, that they must have found something, because Taylor filed the motion to keep the jury from seeing it. It was overruled, so it will come in, but there had to be something on those photos. You're welcome. Thank you, Jet Set, for encouragement and positivity. I do appreciate that for those of you that, take time to share positivity. I really do appreciate it. It does, it makes me feel like it's worth it to do all this work. Okay, so let's keep going because we're going to talk about Ray. Let's see where we are. Okay. We went through the cell phone and computer use. So I do think that is really interesting. So let's talk about Ray. Let me pull that up. Let me see. This one, I'll pull up his picture. There he is. Okay. So that's Ray. Let me take this down, add this in, move myself out of the way. Okay. So he looks like a nice guy. So a lot of people have said, well, Ray, he's not going to be he's not going to be allowed to provide a partial alibi. The judge said no partial alibi. If Bryan Kohberger wants to have an alibi and he can't provide one, he can take the stand and be his own alibi witness. And I'm curious if you think that Ann Taylor is going to let Bryan Kohberger take the stand. If you think that Ann Taylor will put Bryan Kohberger on the stand, put yes on the stand. If you think Ann Taylor is not going to allow Bryan Kohberger to take the stand, just put no, not taking the stand. Okay, so yes, he is taking the stand, or no, he's not taking the stand. What do you think Ann Taylor, his defense attorney, is going to decide? So a little bit about Ray. I've gotten a lot of, this has also been like a heated topic in the comment section. And so a lot of people have said, well, he's working for free. Why would he be doing that? And so this is just my opinion. So the speculation warning here. He founded a niche in the early 2000s with this track method algorithm. Now, the FBI did not have a method at that time, and cell phone companies, they were not releasing timing advance information at the time. But you can see how much technology has changed from the early 2000s. So 20 to 25 years ago, you can see that, in my opinion, how outdated his tracks method probably is, 20 or 25 years later. Some people have described his method as being flawed and that it's scary. We had a judge that would not allow the prosecution to present his methodology because he didn't want somebody, falsely convicted of a crime. And it does make me wonder if there are any, because he was testifying so much for the prosecution, if there are any innocent people behind bars because the technology did become outdated over time. So for years, the FBI and various prosecutions did rely on Ray's technology to help make their cases because there just wasn't anything else back then to do that. But as things, tend to do, technology got better and his technology ultimately became outdated. And soon the prosecution stopped booking him as a paid witness, and he ultimately sold his technology to LexisNexis. Now, Ray is not currently employed by any type of cell phone company or technology company. He is a YouTuber. Nothing wrong with that. I'm a YouTuber too. So he is testifying for free in the Bryan Kohberger case, and people have asked me in the comment section, well, why is he testifying for free? And so here's just my opinion. I don't think I think there's a couple reasons. One, I don't know if anybody is going to really want to pay him to testify. If this is true that he's not being paid, I don't know. I don't have a way to know for sure if he's getting paid or not. I'm just going off of what you guys are telling me in the comment section. But two, I think that whatever press he gets, can only help him with his YouTube channel. He'll gain subscribers, he'll gain followers, he'll gain, being known more. So I do think that there's a benefit to him testifying that's beyond simply getting paid, in my opinion. And I'm not saying he's doing this just for clicks and views or anything like that. I don't want to impugn his integrity or his reputation. But ultimately, this is what the judge decided. So this is not me. This is the judge. The Ray cannot testify to anything that happened after 2:54 a.m. or before 4:48 a.m. because according to the prosecution, Bryan Kohberger's cell phone was turned off and therefore not reporting to cell tower network. So at best, what is Sally Ray going to be able to testify to? He's going to be able to testify that before 2:54 a.m., Bryan Kohberger was going in a different direction. But I don't know how the jury's going to look at that. I mean, I think it's important. I think the defense will be using Cy to poke holes, and he, may be able to poke some good holes in the prosecution. I don't know, but I think he's going to, claim that the Bryan Kohberger's phone the phone pings are less accurate than what the prosecution experts claim, and ultimately, I don't know what the jury's going to think if Bryan Kohberger was going off in a different direction. I mean, he circled the house multiple times. Is it unreasonable to think that he was trying to avoid CCTV cameras on his way to or leaving from the crime scene, or maybe trying to look like he was out for a drive? Let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. So I think Cy Ray's a nice guy. I think he's a good guy. I just think that his technology, maybe outdated. And anyway, I have nothing against Cy Ray at all. Amelia says, until the court hearing, none of us actually knows what happened in those 8 hours. It's all speculation. Okay, so let's see. Is Bryan Kohberger going to take the stand? Let's see what you guys had to say on that. Wayne said, law enforcement needs to come out and say that. Then in the beginning, they said Dylan Mortensen was frozen in shock and then went back to sleep, which we now know is a lie. Well, I don't know if that's a lie. A frozen in shock face could just simply be, Dylan, why didn't he see you? And she's like, I just froze. I was like in a frozen shock phase. Well, we do know she also testified that she, locked her door. So she's not saying she froze for 8 hours. And then she, may have gone back to sleep for a few hours. We just don't know for how long. But, I think that the defense can definitely use that. Love's now blading said, W, they could have been sleeping and slept in. I know at that age and did a lot of partying. Yeah, she says she was drunk. I mean, she's like admitted that. Hi, Spiritual Mysteries. Thank you for modding today, Top Cat. Shelly says, I'm wanting to know if they proved Pappa Roger was BK. I'm waiting. I don't know. We know that there were warrants served on Meta, and Meta is the parent company for Facebook, and that's where Pappa Rogers was posting. And it's also the parent company of Instagram. And Bryan Kohberger was reportedly following Maddie and Kaylee on Instagram. So, and I just showed you guys the data behind that. If you don't want to take the mainstream media's word for it, you don't have to. I just provided you guys with data. Let's see. Okay, so here we go. Yes or no? Is he taking the stand? Trina says no. Kathleen says no. Kami says no. Queen says no. No, 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 no. Oh boy, I don't see. No, nobody thinks he's taking the stand. Nobody thinks he's taking the stand. Nope, not taking the stand. Jackie says no. ALR says no. Kelly, Spiritual Mystery, says no way. No. Grunger says his birthday is November 21st. That's true. And the tags were changed on 5 days after the crimes. And some people say, yeah, but it was his birthday. And like, well, again, it's circumstantial. It's cumulative, right? It's not just one thing. Two things you could explain away. But when you start adding in, well, he changed his tags. I'm just sharing that information with you to explain why he would have used his own car. Because people ask me, well, why did he drive his own car? Why didn't he get a rental car? Why did he choose drive his own car? And my response to that was, well, he changed the tags 5 days after the crime. He knew he was going to change the tags on his car. So why not use his own car? You don't want to change them too soon. Then you look suspicious. So, 5 days after, and his birthday's in November. So it's like, well, he just changed it for his birthday. But again, it's yet another thing to have to, explain away. Barbara says no. Barbarossa says no. Top Cat, no. I don't see Hi, DT. Is that Daniel? Hi, Daniel. Says no. Linda says no. Penny says no. Lizzie says no. Christina says no. Amelia says, until the court hearing, none of us actually knows what happened in those 8 hours. Until then, it's all speculation. DM says, no way. Shelley said, not taking scenes. So I haven't seen anybody think that he is. Oh, wait, I have a yes. Hold on. Jennifer says, I can't help people that don't have common sense and lack reading comprehension. Best of luck to you. Oh, you sound frustrated. Brother Mike says, no way. Crime Dog, no. Barbara, Pauline, we have a yes. One Pauline thinks yes. Barb, no. Lori, no. Lovey says, I really like this judge. I do too. I think he's fair. I think the judge is fair. I think he's firm and he's keeping things moving forward. And I think that, he calls out the prosecution and defense if he, doesn't feel like he agrees with something or he's not sure of something, he will ask and absolutely let them know why. Yeah, please be respectful. We don't all have to agree. We're not going to all agree on everything. You're not going to agree with me on everything about the Chris Watts case. You're not going to agree with me on everything about the Sebastian. We're not going to all agree on every case. And a year from now, we're going to be talking about probably another case. And so it's okay if we don't all agree. Beth says no. Sherry says no. Can I kick it? Says, working on this case will give him notoriety and future business. Yeah, I think it's good for Cy Ray. I do. I think it's good for him. I think it gives him notoriety. It gives him, the fact that he will testify for defense, depending on how it goes. If it goes well and he's able to really, poke some holes into the prosecution's case, then maybe he will get booked on for some more. If it goes badly and he's not able to, then, what's the worst case scenario? People know who he is and his YouTube channel gets bigger. So I don't see a downside of this, in my opinion, for Cy Ray. I think it's a good career move for him, in my opinion. This is probably going to be one of the biggest trials in our lifetime. And the fact that he's, playing a major role for the defense in this, helps his profile, in my opinion. Carrie says no. Bondi says no, not letting him take the stand, even though he may want to. Levy says no way taking the stand. AZ says Kohberger's own psych report says people with autism spectrum disorder make poor witnesses. So yeah, so no, I'm taking that as a no. Wayne says the state needs to keep DM from testifying. The prosecution is putting her on. So the defense did try to make a motion to keep her off the stand. The judge ultimately said that he found her statements to be consistent. He described them as consistent, and she will be taking the stand. So Barbara says no. Unsilent Bob, good to see you. If you don't have a video of the crime happening, I think this, and we saw this in the Ted Bundy case. We've seen this in the OJ case. We've seen this, a lot, even in the Casey Anthony case, she was ultimately found not guilty. And a lot of people think she, did do away with her daughter, Kaylee. I think that no matter what, I think there's going to be some people that are never going to believe it. Even if you showed a video of him doing it, which I don't have. I think there's this very small percentage of people that no matter what you show them are just absolutely not going to believe. It's the same group of people that were, yelling at me a year ago about the tunnels under the house and I wasn't covering the case fairly. And and it's like, well, I don't know what to tell you. I don't think there's tunnels under the house. So I'm not going to come on and lie to my viewers for some clicks and views. And I just stuck to my guns on it. And this doesn't mean I'm always right. This doesn't mean I'm perfect, but I'm not going to knowingly bring you information that I don't think is credible. Welcome, Beth. Thanks for modding today, and Jazz. Dion says no. All right. So it seems like we had one person that thinks he might take the stand. So it seems like no matter if you are pro prosecution, pro defense, or on the fence, everybody's pretty much in agreement that Bryan Kohberger the defense is not going to put him on the stand. Yep. He was born November 21st. You are correct. Veronica said there is a video that shows no license plate in the front. Yep. And we haven't seen, people also love to talk about the Linda Lane video. And I think, that definitely was the only video we had, right, for a really long time. But I also think that it's important to just say that there are 12 hours of raw video footage, according to Ann Taylor, the defense attorney, because she tried to file a motion to keep the 12 hours of raw video footage out, saying that she didn't have time to go through it and therefore it shouldn't be presented to the jury. And I told you guys at the time I didn't think that dog was going to hunt with this judge, who's very much by the book, very much by Idaho law. Because how ridiculous would be, what if you got, say you were at your ATM getting cash out and someone came up behind you and robbed you, and it was caught on the ATM camera, but the defense attorney got up and said, well, I don't have time to go through the video footage of the ATM, so judge, can we just exclude that evidence of my client mugging the victim? Of course that, the judge isn't going to say that's fine. I mean, but she's been trying a lot of different things. I think she's probably into like maybe right around 20 different motions to try to get capital punishment taken off the table between the Latah County judge and this particular judge in Ada County. Love Snowblading says, we want justice, and that's why this horrific crime is so intense and tragic in many ways. You are right. Mike said, Wayne, they don't though. Let's see the trial. They don't need to spoon feed us anything, really. And ultimately, let's just remember that as much as we might have feelings about all of this, and I think there are strong feelings on both, no matter what you think happened, ultimately it's going to be up to the jury to decide, not up to the prosecution, not up to the defense, not up to the witnesses. It's going to ultimately be up to the jury to decide on this case. Crafty Michelle says no. Dabs says no. Shelley thinks that Cyree has blown his credibility. I don't know. I don't know. I think it's going to depend on how it goes on the stand. As of right now, I would just say, let's just see how it goes on the stand. If the prosecution eats him for lunch, then, maybe then we could say that. But if, he holds his own and is able to testify, and he did, has testified for the prosecution in numerous trials. So he has experience as a professional witness testifying. So, maybe he will be okay on this. Barbara said, hit the thumbs up. Yeah, please subscribe. Yeah. Thank you, Barbara. I love you guys. All right, I do want to, we're not done. We still have more stuff to go through, but I do want to say thank you to our producers, Enjas, Sasha Angel, George Brown, Pepper, and Christy Valentine. Thank you for producing the show. And thank you to our channel members. If you would like to have your name appear just like this, I updated it at the day before every single live stream that I do. Please consider hitting the join button, which is next to the subscribe button. It's just a couple of dollars. You get a check mark next to your name in the top chat, and your name appears just like this in all of my videos and live streams. And it's just, it's nice. I really appreciate our channel members. You guys are awesome. And I also want to do super thanks and coffee gratitude to Brother Mike, Kami, and Enjaz, and also channel membership gratitude to Enjaz, 6 cents Amelia, and Enjaz. You're listed again there because you did multiple channel memberships on the last live stream. So thank you so much for that. All right, let's continue to go through some of your comments because I want to hear what you think. Carrie says, I've been watching from my TV, and a few days now I have a virus of some sorts. However, you are doing amazing. Thank you, Carrie, and I hope you feel better. I hope you feel better. Pluck eyebrows. You're about Bryan Kohberger. Hope you're not talking about mine. I think you're talking about Bryan Kohberger. Yeah, the bushy eyebrows. Are those eyebrows bushy? I think that a lot of people would probably characterize those as especially females, as bushy eyebrows. And let me just show this. So here he is. Right after he was arrested. I think they will be trimmed for the show. And then this is the iconic picture of the Idaho 4, along with Dylan and Bethany, that was uploaded by Kaylee just a few hours before she was done away with. So definitely. And then this is the judge. For those of you who have not had a chance to watch the hearing, there's a couple of faces, like when he goes like that, you just don't want the judge to be making that face when you're talking to him, And here's another picture of Bryan Kohberger. All right, so let's continue on. Dion thinks they have a lot of evidence. I think there's a lot too. I know a lot of people were like, there's no evidence. There's no evidence. And it was like, well, when Ann Taylor started filing, when the judge started making, I think this is what happened. This is just my opinion. So speculation warning here. But when Ann Taylor got up, not in the hearing on April 9th, but the hearing before that, and she used the word super secret and secret multiple times. She said super secret, secret, big secret, and secrecy. And I think the judge just, was like, okay, that's it. I'm not playing. And he told the defense and prosecution, you can redact items from your motions, but he gave them some time to go through, redact what they wanted, but that he was releasing them. So I think that's when we started to find out that, yes, there was a lot of evidence. And we know this because Ann Taylor filed motion after motion after motion, trying to suppress the evidence of his body search when he was arrested, of the evidence that they found at the Albrightsville, Pennsylvania home, of the evidence that they found in his Hyundai Elantra. She filed the motion to suppress this. Remember, if it's good for Bryan Kohberger, they're letting it in. If it's bad for Bryan Kohberger, the defense is filing a motion to suppress the evidence. She filed a motion to suppress the evidence at his Albrightsville, Pennsylvania home. His office in Pullman, I'm sorry, his parents' Albrightsville home, and his office in Pullman and his apartment in Pullman. She didn't want any of that evidence to come in. So there is evidence, you guys. So there is evidence. Shannon, thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. I really, really appreciate it. And it's okay if you're late. Did you guys know that if you're late, you can back the chat up? You can slide it back and you can, watch it from the beginning. If you want to back up the chat, you can always do that. And then you could watch it on like a little bit of a faster speed. Sharon Shipley, thank you for the $1.99 super sticker. She said, what is the technical difference between surveilling and stalking? Sorry if you have already answered this. Okay, so let's talk about that. Let me pull this up. That's a great question. Let me pull this up. I'm just looking for one that's not too wonky, because some of these are really wonky. Okay, this is the one I like that I've been shared before. All right, so we'll do that just 1 second. Thank you so much, Shannon, for the $5 super sticker. It's okay that you're late. And Shannon says, Steve Gonzalez said that Kaylee was punched in the face. Yes, I heard that also. That is absolutely heartbreaking. I don't think when the perpetrator went into the room with Maddie that he was expecting Kaylee to be in there as well. And if you heard what Steve Gonzalez has said on various interviews, he said that Kaylee was trapped, that Maddie was on the outside of the bed. So the door was here. Maddie was here. Kaylee was trapped between Maddie and the wall. There was no way for her to get away or get out. And so I do think that it is possible that he was using, both hands, and that one hand held a knife and that the other hand held something else, that he was able to use to, to swing around. Or it could just be that, he punched, and that may be how the knife sheath got lost, was, through something like that. But it's absolutely heartbreaking to hear what happened to these victims. And I do want to thank all of you guys who have been so kind and compassionate to the victims and their loved ones. I feel like during these cases, they tend to get lost in this. So stalking is a person who commits a crime of stalking in the second degree if the person knowingly and maliciously, A, engages in a course of conduct that seriously alarms, annoys, or harasses the victim, and is such as would cause a reasonable person substantial emotional distress. So I don't think this applies in this case. Because I don't think they knew he existed. Maybe they met him at the Mad Greek or saw him around the University of Idaho, but I don't think they really knew who he was. B, I don't think they could have told you his name. Engages in a course of conduct as one would cause a reasonable person to be in fear of death or physical injury, or in fear of death or physical injury of a family member or household. Again, I don't think this applies. I don't think they were in fear of anything, because I don't think they knew who he was. 2A, the course of conduct means repeated acts of non-consensual contact involving the victim or a family or household member of the victims, provided, however, that constitutionally protected activity is not included within the meaning of the definition. So this goes into, family. So I'm not going to go into that, but I just feel like the very beginning, I don't want to get too wonky. I do think that explains why it's just,
Do you see?
it's not really applicable here, the stalking statute. So we'll use the word surveillance. We'll use the word following. We're not going to use the word stalking because as a legal definition, it doesn't apply in Idaho, which is kind of sad that it's like so strict. Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, help me grow. Give me a boost with the YouTube algorithm. I really do appreciate all of you guys who have subscribed to Reporter Room. It means a lot to have your support, your kindness and compassion. Those of you that are kind enough to leave me encouraging remarks, I really, really appreciate those. I do go through and read. Oh, did I read it wrong? It's $9.99, not $1.99. If I'm so sorry, I apologize if I read that wrong, Sharon. I do apologize. Thanks for letting me know, Queen. It wasn't intentional. I can assure you of that. I'm just multitasking here. So I apologize. Unsettled Bob says law enforcement handed over all the discovery and Taylor is too busy taking other cases, other DP cases, to be bothered to read or examine all of it. Yeah. Do you think that, she said that she has said that she told the judge during the last hearing that she didn't have time to go through the raw footage. The judge just kind of ignored it. I think she was looking for another delay. She was just saying she didn't have any time to go through everything. And he said, then hire 4 or 5 paralegals to do it. She goes, well, I wouldn't have time to bring them up to date on the case. But the judge pointed out, but you took another capital punishment case on. So there's that, he just kind of called her on the carpet about that. And I do think that, and let me know what you think. Do you think it was wrong for her to take on another capital punishment case when, she had an obligation to this particular defendant, Bryan Kohberger? Was it wrong for her to take on another capital case? Let me know what you think about that in the comment section below. Do you agree with her taking it on? I mean, she's one of only 2 capital punishment certified attorneys in that area in northern Idaho. So I don't know if they just didn't have anybody else and she felt compelled to take it on. But I'm just curious if you think that she did have a fiduciary obligation to the case that she was currently working on, and that should have been the priority, especially such a high profile case. Dig the Past thinks we're all in for a shock. Well, we might be. And that's, one of the great things about being part of the Reporter Room community is that we do really all work hard to keep our minds open. We don't do, I really work actively in my own mindset not to do confirmation bias, which means I'm only looking for information that confirms what I already believe. I try to bring in all the information. I'm so sorry, Kathleen. But if you're the type of person who likes to have all the information so you can make up your own mind, then this is the right channel for you. And I do think it's important for us to keep our minds open for more information, because I do think we're going to learn more. And when we actually get to the trial, we're going to learn, hopefully everything. Jennifer says they ultimately do. I admire Steve Gonzalez's strength and hate that these kids suffered. I do too. Yeah, he's done a great job advocating for his daughter, Kaylee. Let me see. Yeah, we're going to do Sebastian Rogers next. If you want to follow me over, I'm going to do the missing case of Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers next. I have a great show. I worked on a video all day yesterday for you guys on that. So we're going to do that next. So follow me over and then be on the lookout. I have I'm going to be doing another Bryan Kohberger live stream in just a couple days, because this is only half of what I had prepped. I had a whole nother show prepped for today, and I had to pivot because we had all this breaking news, and of course that's going to take priority. But I have a lot of other information that I'm going to share with you guys. So I'll be scheduling that in the next few days for another Bryan Kohberger live stream, and then so be on the lookout for that as well. All right, you guys. Well, I think that's it on this case for today. I think we got through a lot of great information. Let me know if there's something else on this case that you want me to dig into. I most certainly will. And thank you so much for coming by to spend a little bit of time with me. It's always a joy and a pleasure to have this opportunity to interact with you. And I will see you in a couple days on the next Bryan Kohberger live stream. Subscribe, it's free. Help a girl out. Bye.